Hey folks, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and today's video will be the upgrade guide for the Eldrazi Unbound Commander Precon from the Commander Master set that was released in August of 2023. Before I get to today's video, I want to first take a moment to let you know that if you'd like to help support my channel, you can do so in the following ways. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share any of my content on your socials so other people can discover it, and or watch some of my many other videos yourself. In addition to that, if you're interested in ways that you can help support my channel monetarily, please read the description of this video, and there you will find a myriad of options for what you can do to help me keep this channel going. Anything that you can do to help is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for it. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. As is always the case when I do these guides, I will show you some suggestions on what I would add to make this deck play better, but I will also show you what cards I would remove as well. There is a unique issue that this precon has that I'm hoping to address with this guide, so if you're watching this video hoping to hear me suggest adding monetarily expensive cards like an Emrakul or Void Winnower, then this video will not be for you. Instead, what I plan to show you is a more budget-friendly Eldrazi Kindred build, using some of the lesser Eldrazi, but I'm going to try and hide that this is an Eldrazi build a little bit. How do I plan to do that, you ask? It's very simple. I'm going to suggest changing the commander from Zolodok to Liberator Urza's Battlethopter. The reason for this change is twofold. First, it's one of the few decent colorless options for a commander that can advance a purely colorless theme. And secondly, the abilities are more relevant for the new direction that I want to take this in than Zolodok's. Take a moment to read what Liberator does, and you will see for yourself that for 3 mana, you get a pretty decent commander for your investment. And that investment can actually grow throughout the game, literally. I'm not suggesting to remove Zolodok completely though, just relegate him to the 99. When you sit down at a table to play this new version of Eldrazi Unbound and reveal Liberator as your commander, I'm pretty sure most people will think it's an artifact deck and not an Eldrazi deck. Okay, so that's one big change. Now let's take a look at what I would remove to make room for some other much needed upgrades. First things first, one thing that I want to point out is that you could, and I actually think you should, remove all 15 copies of the basic wastes and replace them with any land that enters play untapped, produces colorless mana, and has literally any ability at all, and it would be better than using a wastes. Obviously you want to add lands with relevant or useful abilities like Ash Barrens, Cryptic Caves, and Hall of Tegsin, for example, but there are over 200 lands that fit this criteria, so why waste a land spot on an aptly named waste? Sure, there are a few reasons to include them because they are basic lands, but I genuinely feel that the benefit outweigh the possible downsides to doing this. With that said though, the rest of this guide will be based on not doing that because I feel that most people feel more comfortable using basics just in case someone might be playing non-basic land hate of some kind. So with that said, I'd remove the following: 2 wastes, Worn Powerstone, Dreamstone Hedron, Wormquill Serpent, Omarthus Ghostfire Initiate, Myriad Construct, Scare Tiller, Duplicant, Meteor Golem, Ancient Stone Idol, Metalwork Colossus, Mazemind's Tomb, Investigator's Journal, Fire Shrieker, and Transmogrifying Wand. All of these cards are just not very good no matter what the strategy is. Also, with the change from Zolodok to Liberator, you can bring the overall average cost to cast for this deck down a little, since you won't have to worry about triggering your commander's ability of casting expensive spells anymore. Now, unless you want to do this whole replace all the wastes things that I mentioned, that's 16 cards in total that I'd recommend removing, so now we have to replace them. Let me show you what I believe would be much better options to include in this build. I'll start with the creatures since I already talked about what you could do with the lands. Remember that I'm trying to keep the monetary cost down since this precon is already quite expensive. There are 8 creatures in total that I'll show you, and it should be no surprise that all of them are Eldrazi. The first one is a card that was just recently spoiled in Modern Horizons 3 called It That Heralds the End. It's not exactly an Eldrazi Lord, but it can be. It's actually a colorless creature lord with the added ability of reducing the cost of your more expensive colorless creatures, and is just a natural card to recommend. The second creature is also a card that was recently spoiled in Modern Horizons 3 called Glaring Fleshraker. This new card gives you Eldrazi spawn tokens that can be used as both blockers and much needed ramp. Since this whole deck is colorless, when this is in play, you should be able to create a pretty decent number of these tokens. The third creature is called Thought Not Seer, and is pretty fairly costed for what it does. The sneaky thing is you can even choose a different opponent for each of the 2 abilities, which is kind of funny to do. The fourth creature is Reality Smasher, which again is pretty fairly costed for what it does. 5 mana for a 5/5 with trample, haste, and an ability that dissuades people from using spot removal on it is decent even by today's standards of power creep. The fifth creature is called Conduit of Ruin and gives you both a tutor and cost reduction in one body. What's not to love? The sixth creature is again a recently spoiled card from Modern Horizons 3 called Eldrazi Ravager. Thanks to the new Glaring Fleshraker, you can now create sacrificial lambs to take advantage of the card's cycling ability and its ability to return to your hand later to cycle again. The Fleshraker and Ravager together aren't game-breaking, but they do provide a little value for a deck that's lacking in card draw. The seventh creature is called Deceiver of Forms, and if things line up right with this in play, some crazy shenanigans can definitely ensue, especially if the card you reveal has Annihilator. Speaking of, the 8th creature is called Pathraiser of Ulamog. It should be pretty obvious why I would recommend this card. Annihilator 3 plus Evasion seems pretty good, but 11 mana is steep. However, the addition of cost reducers combined with Eldrazi spawn token creators that can sacrifice themselves to give you extra mana should help ease things a bit. Next, I want to show you one instant and one sorcery that I feel would be great inclusions to this build. The instant is another newly spoiled card from Modern Horizons 3 called Null Elemental Blast. I believe this is a decent removal spell considering that there aren't many of them that are colorless. And the sorcery is called Skittering Invasion. I'm actually kind of shocked that it wasn't in the box to begin with. It is called Eldrazi Unbound after all. Now I'd like to show you 2 artifacts that I'd recommend adding. The first artifact is yet again a new card recently spoiled in Modern Horizons 3 called Idol of False Gods. It starts off innocently enough, creating little spawn tokens, but eventually it can become one very big creature ready to annihilate anything in its path. Now, since we've added quite a few more Eldrazi, the other artifact that I would add to help the deck run a little more smoothly is called Herald's Horn. It provides a little cost reduction and some quasi-card draw, which makes this an easy choice to add. The same goes for the only Planeswalker that I would recommend, and it's a big one, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Sure, it's monetarily more expensive than I usually like to recommend, but this one is worth it for this deck. Between direct damage, removal, card draw, life gain, and putting permanents from your hand directly into play for free are just worth it in my opinion. Now, let's talk about a combo that's quite easy to assemble, does a lot of work in a deck like this, and I've sort of recommended before for the most part. The box already came with a Forsaken Monument, so just simply adding a Basalt Monolith will net you infinite mana. Since the Monument lets you tap the Monolith for 4 mana, Simply just use 3 of it to untap itself, netting you 1 colorless mana per activation. There are some pretty expensive spells in this deck, so having access to unlimited mana is good, but you also want to make use of this unlimited mana in a better way if you can, so I'd also recommend adding a Staff of Domination. This way, you can use all of that mana to do the following: gain infinite life, untap creatures infinitely if you like, tap any amount of creatures you want, and draw any amount of cards that you want to. Like I said, this combo is easy, but also quite effective. The only issue with this combo is that it doesn't necessarily win the game for you. It can net you enough cards to draw into a win con, but on its own, it's just a utility combo. If you prefer, instead of a Staff of Domination, you could use the King of Infinite Colorless Mana Sinks, Walking Ballista, instead. It just comes down to what your personal preferences are, utility or damage. And there you have it, folks, my upgrade guide for the Commander Masters Eldrazi Unbound Commander Precon. Everything I suggested will certainly not make this Precon a top-tier deck, but it will make it better overall. Changing the Commander to Liberator should help make this Precon more flexible in what you can do, and eventually you may just change this to an entirely artifact deck. I know I would. My honest opinion is that I don't really like this Precon. Like many others, I was excited to finally see not just a colorless Precon, but also an Eldrazi one, but sadly, this one falls very flat. If you're going to name a deck Eldrazi Unbound, give us some damn Eldrazi and not this pile of really overpriced crap. Sure, some of the new cards we got are good, but overall, most of the cards that came in this Precon I would never use. Like I said in the unboxing, hopefully the new 5-color Eldrazi deck from Modern Horizons 3 will be much better. Going by some of the new additions to the colorless Eldrazi family that we are getting in that set, I have to imagine that it will be. Well, folks, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and if you're looking for more content to watch, please browse my playlists, as I'm sure you'll find a lot more of my videos that you'll like. If not, I hope to see you again next week, where I'll be doing this all over again for the Sliver Swarm Precon. Have a nice day.